Hey guys, let's talk today about how some of your worst experiences in life can actually become some of your greatest assets. Does that sound strange? Probably. Let's get into it. I'm going to show you how a shift in your perspective about a bad experience can shift your life. But first, in the most difficult living situation we ever had, we literally had no functional heat. There was no oven. There was no functional stove. So we had two hot plates, camper style, and that was our kitchen. And when we moved in, they said, you're not going to want to move these off of the holes in the floor and all of the piping. They keep the rats out. The toilet, it was a hole in the ground. Did I mention that I was about 8 months pregnant at the time? Squatting only access. Logistically, so we said, this is probably not going to work too well. Last trimester of pregnancy and hole in the ground. So we went halfers and we bought a seat to sit on, but it had no flushing mechanism. So there was no water that would flush the toilet. So we had to get the few pots that we had in the kitchen, fill them up with water and do rounds, fill them up and dump them and just hope after, well, usually it took about 5, 6, 7, 8 times to get the toilet to actually flush. Still better than squatting when you're 8 months pregnant. Just wait, it gets even better. The bathroom was a narrow hallway. It was so narrow that we'd put our hands like that and you'd be touching both walls. On this side here, there was the sink and it was just at the height where my 8-month pregnant belly was. So when I would have to pass by the sink in the narrow hallway to get to the toilet at the end, I would have to lift my pregnant belly up and stand on my tiptoes just to squeeze over the sink in order to get to the non-flushing toilet. There was no shower and no bath, but we did have running water, a pipe that sat about a foot off the ground. The water ran onto the floor and into one of the holes where we had to be careful so that the rats wouldn't come up. And so for getting clean, you would have to squat in the narrow hallway while the water ran down onto the floor. And then me, with my 3rd trimester pregnant belly, squatting in this tiny room. You know, at least we did have some hot water. I'm gonna say we had at least 90 seconds of hot water with that hot water tank. We also had visible mold that was growing up the walls. It was kind of like a decoration. There was a lot of it and it grew up the walls. So I couldn't breathe. So the problem with that was we would have to sleep with the door open, but our bedroom door went on to the street. So people who walked by could actually look right into our bedroom. Because it was so cold, we also had to sleep with our clothes fully on. Like I'm talking jackets and everything. Did I mention it was winter during all this? Yeah, it was winter. And by sleep, I mean on a good night, it would be about 3 hours of sleep. Did I mention I was very pregnant? So my favorite part in this story, looking back, in hindsight, it's always better in hindsight. I thought I'm gonna open up my bag where all of our baby stuff has been packed away. That was gonna feel all wonderful. So I had this huge duffel bag where we had all of these gifts and baby clothes we'd been given. I went over to it thinking, this is gonna be a really special day. I'm gonna have all these connections and think about our baby that's coming. So I opened the duffel bag, and at the very top of the duffel bag, there was a tarantula. Yeah. So I'm shrieking and screaming in just stunned, freaking outedness. Then I had to go back to the bag and sort of poke at it and realize that the tarantula was dead and it was lying on the top of the bag. So I guess it crawled in without me realizing and it died right on top of our brand new baby clothes. I'm not traumatized. I'm not traumatized. Not traumatized. What's up with spiders anyways? Like these big juicy spiders. spiders that are like this big. Blah, blah, blah. Spiders aren't supposed to have fur in my books. Why do spiders have long hair and fur? It's just wrong. So how did we go from that to actually being truly grateful about all of that? In the Bible, God says in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verses 16 through 18, rejoice always, pray without ceasing, give thanks. That's the key. Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. Let's say that one again. Give thanks in all circumstances. God doesn't say feel thanks in that verse. He says give thanks. Give thanks. That's a verb. That's an action. That's a choice. So gratitude is actually a choice. And that's one of the most important things that I've learned over the years, rather than waiting for a feeling, waiting for a better circumstance, waiting for something to go the way that I want to go. Something that God has really shown me over the years is that gratitude is a choice. So here's what you can do to take a situation in your life that has felt brutal and reframe it into something that actually feels beautiful, that you can actually genuinely be grateful for. Sometimes that can happen in an instant. There's a moment, there's an awakening, the Holy Spirit gives you something and you're like, this is incredible. I just saw it through new eyes. God can totally do that. And yet often, God brings us through a process. So sometimes it's a step-by-step process of the renewing of our minds to bring us from one perspective that is less helpful into a more helpful perspective. You start by taking a situation that's been really difficult for you. You're going to start to reflect on it and look at where you're at now compared to where you were at then. So you're going to get a little bit of that contrast perspective. So look at your situation now. What looks different now? What's changed? How has your perspective shifted? Have you grown from that experience? Did you learn anything from that experience? You're going to start to reflect on where you're at now compared to where you were then. You might not be where you want to be yet, but this is a great way to shift your perspective and to increase your gratitude. When you see that change, you see the transformation, you begin to reflect and go, okay, I want more of these things. I want to be better in these areas. I want more of God in these areas. I want to see more things that are improvements in my life, or whatever it might be for you. But when you look and reflect with eyes of gratitude and you begin to ask the right questions, you have to ask the right questions. That's really important. The second thing to remember, if you're not feeling grateful for something, don't sit around and wait for the feelings. Start with making gratitude a choice. You choose to pull some of those golden nuggets, and it might be in a deep, dark mine in your life where you have to go into this like dark place and look for something that's beautiful. But don't forget, in deep, dark mines, there are also jewels in there. There are diamonds, there are rubies, there's gold. So there is good, but we have to learn to look at it with new eyes, to pull and extract those beautiful things, those golden nuggets, those precious little rubies and diamonds out of those difficult experiences. Sometimes that starts by actively needing to choose to look at it and choose, I'm going to be grateful for this. Sometimes it has to be by faith to start with. That's totally fine. But it's a choice. And don't worry about the feelings yet. The feelings might come. But you got to choose the right things first. So you're going to choose to be grateful. You're going to choose to reflect with eyes of gratitude. And then wait and see how you feel afterwards. But if you sit around and wait for the feelings, they might never show up. Before I share my list with you of what we're truly grateful for, at the end of this video, I'm going to share with you the most important points. So stick with me to the end. So the next thing to do is get out a pen and a paper, unless you have a journal like this. We're just going to look for three things, three of those golden nuggets, those rubies that you're able to pull. We have never stopped being grateful. Why? Because we have the contrast perspective. It's not that we have a mansion today that makes it so easy to look back and life is so wonderful now that everything pales in comparison. It's not about that. Everywhere we've lived, everywhere we have visited and been since then, because of choosing to practice gratitude, like God says in 1 Thessalonians, Give thanks in all circumstances. So we have to train ourselves to do that and bring that into our current situation. But here are 3 things that I've always been grateful for since then. Number 1, a toilet. A literal seat to sit on, like a toilet. That's it, like a toilet. Toilets are great. The second thing is a house that's actually warm, especially in winter. And the third thing that literally my husband to this day still gives thanks for when we're praying is warm running water. Sometimes we have to look at the simplest things because it's the simple small things in life that add up. That's a part of our day-to-day experience. Having a warm house, having water, warm running water that lasts longer than, let's say, 90 seconds. Some of these things in life, if you've had a rough experience and you can look at it with that contrast perspective and you can look at where you were to where you're at now, it's so precious to be able to not sit around and wait for some huge thing to happen, but to actually look at the little things that make up our daily lives, to look with eyes of gratitude and how much God has given, how much God has done, and how much you've transformed and grown. And if we can practice gratitude in the most difficult situations, give thanks in all circumstances, then you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. It might be rough, it might be tough, it might be brutal right now, or it might have been brutal for a long time. But with God, you're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay. And I have a 4th bonus point. I know I said 3 points. There's no tarantulas here, and no rats the size of cats. So some of our hardest things from yesterday become some of our best stories and best and most powerful testimonies for today. Take this perspective into your next trial. Take this perspective if you're going through something hard right now. What you're going through right now, God is building a testimony. Choose to give thanks in this circumstance right now. The trial that you've been through that was so hard, it was so brutal, you didn't know how you're going to get through it. You got through it. You're here. You're alive. You're going to be okay. Begin to practice gratitude by looking at the contrast perspective, where you've been, where you are today. God got you through. So take a pen and paper right now and write down 3 things that you can practice gratitude about as a choice. And this is how some of our worst life experiences become the springboards for some of our biggest assets in life. Choose gratitude. It'll change your life. God bless you.